It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. Today's guest is Art Bowker. He's also known as Art Cyber Safety Guy. And we haven't talked about stalking in a long time. Not that it's stopped becoming an issue, but I don't know, just took a break from information regarding stalking. Art, I see you. So let me get him on. I've talked about cybersecurity and cyber safety and cyber stalking. Haven't, things have changed with AI. And so I am really anxious to talk to Art about what's going on with cyber safety, especially with AI and social media. And I don't know why we can't get him on. Let me see. Let me try it one more time. All right. So hopefully we can get him on. And if it doesn't work, I'm just going to start this again. But I want to talk about cyber stalking, regular stalking. There you are.
Here we are.
That worked. Okay, good. So before you even introduce yourself, Art, can you talk about what stalking means and what's the difference between that and cyber stalking?
All right. Well, stalking is, basically as it sounds. You're following somebody, you're tracking their movements, and you're doing it in a manner that it causes them emotional distress. Um, they in my mind, maybe emotional distress. They feel for their safety. They feel maybe they feel concern about their family, um, and it's kind of like on a continuum of harassment. It goes from harassment to stalking, where you're actively looking to ways to find out what's going on with this person and track their movements and basically make their life miserable. Um, Cyber stalking is just the incorporation of technology, be it computers, be it tracking software, internet. It just takes it to a whole nother level. And if I'm trying to think of a time before computers, if somebody was stalking you, they had to like maybe look in the phone book to see where your address was and physically go there and spend time watching you. But with the computer and the internet, they don't have to do that. They can search, they can stalk you from their home. They can find out where you're at. They could, depending on what kind of access do they have to your computer, if they can trick you to installing software, they can do everything remote. They don't have to be on site to do it. So that is a big thing, and they can do it 24/7. It doesn't have, they can conceivably record what activities you're doing and then go back and retrieve it and examine it later. So takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, yeah. So before we go on, even though I wrote down like three more questions I just thought of, can you formally introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and how it connects with cyber stalking?
Okay. My name is Art Bowker. I was a U.S. probation officer I retired from that job. And in that job, I developed expertise in investigating cyber crimes and actually supervising individuals convicted of cyber crimes. A lot of those crimes were sex offenses, but we also had cyber stalking offenses. And I supervised a cyber stalker and people who've started to use technology to harass, uh, former partners and whatnot. Um, I developed an association with the High Tech Crime Investigators Association, where actually started the Ohio chapter, became a member, and eventually became the executive president of this. It's the largest nonprofit organization devoted to the investigation, prevention, and prosecution of crimes involving technology. Through that association, I met Todd Shipley, who is my co-author on our book. We've actually written two books, one on investigating internet crimes, and the most recent one, surviving a cyber attack. And Todd is a former um, Reno detective that was in charge of their cybercrime unit, and he's an expert in internet investigations. So we teamed up, and through our collective knowledge and experience, we wrote some resources for individuals to stay safe online, as well as to investigate internet crimes.
Yeah. Wow. That's very impressive. What about, so one of the things I just thought of is there a certain personality type? Because you said you supervised people who had done these kinds of crimes. What kind of personality or person does things like that? Stalk someone either through technology or in real life?
Well, I had the opportunity to supervise basically a stranger type stalking situation where the person had no connection to their victim at all, other than they saw them, they were TV personality, and they became enamored with them. And that becoming enamored, they started stalking them. They were uh, sending them things in the mail, and they were following online and posting things. And um, so that's one extreme. But then I also had individuals that, they were partners, married, and something happened to the relationship, and they fell apart. And uh, the in this case, it was a male started harassing his partner with technology, sending text messages. So I think, you got the individual, the stranger danger type thing. He had some personality disorders and mental health concerns, but I think it's a different kind of personality when it comes to the stalking. I don't want to say anybody can do it, but maybe there's some emotional connection, and uh, they're just, they've got some mental health concerns, and it escalates. They may seem normal, but something triggers it, and the loss or whatever. And I think too that in some ways it's a controlling type thing. I want to control them. They got away from me. I want to control them. I want to watch their movements. I don't want them to do anything unless I approve it. So that kind of thing. A narcissist maybe would be a good example, but I can see, you know, people, they you could have somebody that starts on the stalking type behavior, like, oh, I really like this girl, and I'm going to start sending her flowers, and not realizing that, it's getting creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Those people will usually, like, if you tell them, hey, stop, they'll recognize it. Stalker, they keep going. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't stop them, you know.
So they don't care
Uh,
about the consequences.
no, no. They're not concerned about how it's affecting the person. That that they feel unsafe. Um, it's all about them. You know, how can I control this person? How can I make them come back to me or whatnot? Or maybe it's just I want to harass them. I don't really care about them. I just want to harass them and make their life miserable. Let them know I know what they're doing, and so they modify their behavior to my wishes.
As you're talking, it's making me think of an incident with one of my kids where they were in a very short term dating relationship and broke up with the other person. And this kid just will not stop. So I'll just say my daughter has said, I'm not interested. She went to another country and, was trying to be really nice about it and just relentless, just keeps trying to get in touch. Can I pick you
Mhm.
up at the airport? I'm going to write to you. And is that considered stalking?
That's the start of it. If they're not taking no for, like, no. Um, and law enforcement, um, one of the key things to prosecute a cyber stalker or harasser is the person needs to say, look, your attentions are no longer wanted. Stop these. You are causing me stress. Well, not tell them stress. You're just. I don't want you contacting me anymore. If
Mhm.
you contact me again, I'm going to let the authorities know. Okay, and just stop, and don't, like, respond if they respond back or why, or it's just you cut it off. you document it, you make sure you know it. And then if it continues, you go to law enforcement and you explain this person, it continues. I told them to stop. Here's the evidence that I told them to stop. This is causing me emotional distress, harm, their continued attentions, and they can pick it up. That gives them the evidence that this is not just somebody. They don't have to go to the step of, look, you need to stop doing what you're doing. It's enough that, you know, that you've told them and you've documented that they can prosecute them.
Yeah. There's a question that I don't understand. Is this the same as doxing? I don't know what doxing is.
No, no, no. Doxing is, well, that's a, that's a whole nother area of harassment. That's where somebody targets you and they will use computer technology to make a 911 call from your house, make it appear it's coming from your house, tell the authority, pretend to be a family member from your house, and say, so and so is threatening me with a gun, and they're threatening to kill everybody in the house. Now, when law enforcement gets that 911 call, they organize SWAT, respond in force. They
Wow.
believe there's imminent danger, and people can get killed. You know,
Oh, I learned something. I
yeah,
never heard that
and
before.
yeah, they will do that. It's kind of a hacker type thing that was done early on, but the technology is so easy. You know, if you go on the internet, you could probably find a YouTube video on how to do it, or on the dark web, the tools that are needed. But basically, you're calling a 911 service and getting a police response and to harass somebody. So they initially it was like a prank, like they thought that was funny, but people are doing that. Political officials have been attacked that way. The other thing is they'll order pizzas, to the delivery, which doesn't require technology to do that, but um, that's what doxing is.
Oh, wow. Interesting. All right. I was wondering if you see more, is this like a gender issue with stalking? Does it matter? Do you see more men or women, or is it about the same with stalking, cyber stalking in particular?
Now, my experience was it was a male activity, but males are predominantly in the commit more crimes than females anyway. But that being said, there's nothing that stops a female from doing this activity, and they're just as susceptible to being stalkers as males. I mean, that movie Fatal Attraction, that
Yeah.
was a female.
Yeah.
So uh, it's possible. My experience was I dealt with males mostly that were involved in this behavior, but females do it as well. And females, um, uh, it could be a homosexual relationship to two females.
Mhm.
One of them could turn around and do the same, as just as a male, and not that it has to be a homosexual relationship, but yeah, I would say it's my experience is probably that males, but females obviously are not immune to becoming cyber stalkers.
Mhm. Okay. What are some really common ways like people cyber stalked? And what about with the phones? Phones in particular. That seems to be like a hot issue in our community where people feel like my ex is listening on my phone, they have access, I'm worried, or even on a laptop. But the phone seems to be the center of everything.
Well, I think you need to differentiate between uh, a cyber stalker that starts off as a complete stranger. You had no contact with them whatsoever. They weren't a coworker. They weren't anybody that had your access to your computers or whatnot.
No, so our I'm talking only like intimate partners. So
Yeah,
our community is
intimate.
all like the
Yeah,
relationships. Yeah.
yeah. That becomes and the reason why I was differentiating between the two is if you have an intimate relationship with somebody,
Hmm.
you may have shared your password with them. And if you didn't share your password, they may know enough about you to guess your password.
Hmm.
And they may have had access to your vices at one point So that opens up a whole possibility that they can install something on your computer,
Mm-hmm.
or just don't even have to install something, just log into your social media accounts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first thing you got to do is when you break up is change all your passwords,
Mm-hmm.
that they could have had access. Um, if you have a phone, you need to, well, you obviously have a phone, but you need to change passwords on that as well. Make sure you have antivirus software running to prevent all those types of things from occurring. So if they've installed something and you turn around and were to install an antivirus software, the antivirus software would block it because you have not given the antivirus software, you haven't given the monitoring software that they've installed permission to send things. So if you install antivirus software, it should stop it. But you may have to have it checked out by a professional. Um, but yeah, again, it creates, they might not install something on your cell phone. I know a case where um, individual they had the um, they had the password to log into the cell phone account,
Mm-hmm.
and from there they could retrieve text messages online. So they didn't have access to anything on the cell phone, but they had access to the account, and that gave them access to those text messages and whatnot. So you got to change all the passwords. Don't use a password that could be guessed by that person. That's really the first thing you need to do when you're breaking up with somebody and you have a fear that they're going to go take that route.
Yeah, and so we heard an interesting story a little while ago from someone who said their client's ex was using a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera to still monitor them.
Yes. Well, what that tells me is you have a neighbor who hasn't locked down their internet, their and somehow they got access to that account. Um, I that's a devious one, and I can see that occurring if that person's able to worm their way in and get access to a neighbor's account before they vacate. And once that's found out, they've got to contact the neighbor and say, hey, you need to change your password. I don't think you want somebody else to be able to log into your system and do that. Um, there are devices that people can buy that you could plug in, or you could just leave a camera, a USB camera, and record even without having and come by and pick it up later.
Mm-hmm.
So um, those things are, that's somebody that you really, you need to report that to law enforcement and get law enforcement involved.
Okay, so we got a great question. Who would be considered a professional to assess our phones? Like, I wouldn't know what to look for.
Well, you could take it to a computer forensic person that knows about cell phones if you suspect that. Um, if you really, you don't want to mess around with your phone, go get depending on where you're in your service, just get a new phone.
Mm-hmm.
Switch out and get a new phone and change providers and change passwords so that you don't have to worry about that. Um, you might be able to take it to law enforcement. They may have somebody, a computer expert, but I think you need to have some clear examples of how they may be using that phone to track you. It could be you're posting things online and they're tracking you from that post, um, or maybe you were with a friend and the friend posted that post. So you need to ascertain it's really the cell phone that's wouldn't being tracked. I mean, there's cases where they've used uh, the Apple tags or Apple uh,
AirTags.
yeah, the AirTags, and they'll throw those in somebody's bag or something, or
Mm-hmm.
attach it to the car and track them that way. So I know the victims will go to police and ask them to check the
Mm-hmm.
car to see if it's got a tracking device on it.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, what about a room? So besides a phone or devices, but how can you tell if your room is bugged? This is a huge issue in our community where they might even still share a house, and there's concerns that they're being listened to, um, in their own home or being tracked and monitored.
Okay, so they're still living together. They haven't separated.
Or they have separated, and our client is concerned that the house is bugged. We had a situation with a client a couple of years ago where her ex had put cameras in their smoke detectors.
Well, in if you have in what I would say is know who your partner is. If your partner um, is not educated in how to do spyware, then you may um, it's I don't want to say know your enemy, but it's kind of like know what the capability is of your partner. If your partner doesn't have the remotest capability to do that, then they would have had to hire somebody. You have to ascertain, is that possible? Now, if you're dealing with a partner who's very technically sophisticated,
Mhm.
then that's a real you know it's a real possibility. And you, there are private detective agencies that will do a sweep to see if the room's been bugged or check. It used to be that you could um, a, a uh, a camera, a remote camera, if you took another camera, swept a camera across the room, a video camera, you'd see the red dot show up from the camera, and that was a
Oh,
way, a low tech way to find it. But if you have somebody that's very technically sophisticated and knows, you would be well advised to get a professional if you think that that's going on.
okay.
That
And would
they're
that also be like a forensic, you said?
Yeah, you could. A private detective would advertise, that they have anti-surveillance capabilities to check for bugs and whatnot.
Okay, so really it's looking for anti-surveillance.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And any other I know we're getting a little low on time, but any other tips that people can know to be proactive if they are separating from someone, and know that their ex is capable of these kinds of things, as many of them are? And I love the comment that just came in. YouTube makes everyone capable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it does. Um, I guess, when you're getting ready to break up the relationship, you need to start isolating your technology so that person can't have access to it, you know, cutting them off, changing passwords, changing accounts, um, you know, taking those pre steps, and doing it in a manner that, you're not like, hey, we're having trouble, so I'm going to change all the passwords. That may make the situation worse, but do
Yeah.
it tactfully. If they say, "Whoa, why'd you change your password?" Well, then that they're checking the password, and your
Hmm.
explanation is, "Oh, I got an alert that I was hacked." So,
Hmm.
and that brings up an important point. Be aware if somebody sends you email or something and says, "Hey, your account's been hacked," because there are ways to get into accounts, and we've had individuals do that where they send an email saying their account's been hacked, and they end up giving the password to the person that they don't want to have it.
Oh, wow.
So be aware they will use social engineering techniques, just like a hacker, to get access to your stuff, get you to trick and install monitoring software that wasn't there before. So be aware when the relationship is coming to a climax, or not a climax, but an end,
Yeah.
that they could use those techniques. Maybe they want to know what's going on. Maybe they know the relationship's on the rocks and they're thinking, I'm going to start following. I want to know what's going on. And that might be the start of your trouble.
Wow, that's important to think about. All right, so Art, how can people find you and your book?
Well, the book is on Amazon. It's Surviving a Cyber Attack. And um, it's divided up into securing your computers and your social media. But we have chapters for protecting your kids, protecting your elderly loved ones, your small businesses. So we have divided specific chapters for that. So find the chapter that, fits you. Or, the whole book is actually applicable, or you can find something depending on where you're at in your life that is applicable. We talk a little bit about AI and how AI can be used in criminal enterprises to attack you. And more importantly, well, not more importantly, but equally important, our whole goal is, look, we're going to tell you how to prevent yourself from being crime, but we're going to recognize that there's a high likelihood you're going to be attacked. And we're going to give you the tools on how to stop the attack and how to properly report it and recover. That's the thing, surviving a cyber attack. That book is available on Amazon. You do a Google search on my name, Art Bowker, you're going to find all kinds of references. I've got my co-author and I have a website, the cybersafetyguys.com or .blog. You can find us there. And again, if you search for my name, Art Bowker, Bowker, you'll find me. And I'm also on Instagram. I have this account. I got another account that's not somewhere germane to this, but that's the best way to find me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I know we're getting a couple other questions, but we have to end this one, but maybe we can continue the conversation.
Oh, I would love to. There's a lot to talk
Big,
about.
yeah, big topic. All right, thanks so much for coming on today, and we will definitely do this again.
All right, sounds good. Take care.
All right, you too.